From corporate strategy to Bold Move Beverages, Jacob's Cold Brews aims to energize and socialize. We cover his path from kitchen tests to 6-state distribution and his goal to rival the mimosa. Jacob, thanks so much for being here, man.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
Fortune 500 companies you're working in before to starting your own beverage company. Give me a little bit of history. How'd this all come about?
You know, it was a little bit of a genesis story. I kind of always had this entrepreneurial itch, but you know, in college, I didn't quite have that idea yet that I could really sink my teeth into and wanted to go all in on. So following another passion, I went into the travel industry, worked at American Airlines, first job out of college. Really cool experience, learned a ton, loved the standby travel, you know, flight perks, flying all over the world. Really loved that experience, made some good friends, and then went and worked for Princess Cruises, which is part of Carnival Cruise Lines, and that was kind of that next leap kind of in that travel hospitality industry. And it was kind of at that time that the idea for Bold Move Beverages, Cold Brews came to me, and made my bold move to start pursuing that. So that was kind of the genesis of it. I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur, always wanted to make that bold move, fell in love with coffee after college. Always liked to have drinks with friends, was always tired, wanted to energize and socialize, and kind of, you know, working in those corporate environments was a good kind of learning experience, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do long term. And so kind of always looking ahead to the future, the idea came and took the opportunity to run with it.
I'm sure you had those thoughts where identifying opportunities and that sort of thing. Going back into like early years, like, you know, as a kid or you know, in college, that sort of thing, were you able to identify opportunities and things that you wanted to pursue from an entrepreneurial standpoint?
I always kind of had a lot of passions. I think there was a time where I was, you know, I viewed it as a negative, where I was a jack of all trades and I was well-rounded and liked all these different things. I liked to play sports. I love movies, you know, was into, you know, video games, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't have like this one thing, this one industry that I'm like, I'm going to go do that when I grow up, you know, whether it was work in film or work in the, you know, growing up in California, you know, the film industry is huge. And that was always something that was cool, but didn't really see myself working in that industry. Sports, always, you know, loved playing sports. I saw my parents they kind of modeled, you know, entrepreneurship in a different way than most people think of it. They are dentists, they have their own practice. And so for me, they own their own business, and I saw them kind of growing that up, you know, as a kid, and all the hard work that happened, you know, behind the scenes, my dad staying up late, you know, doing the books and kind of modeling hard work and seeing kind of what it takes to be your own boss and how much hard work it really takes. I always, you know, really respected that and kind of wanted that kind of life for myself one day, I think. But it was one of those things that took some time to kind of manifest.
It's also one of those things that you don't want to jump into the wrong thing too soon, right? Like, I'm sure you learn a lot from your other experiences and that sort of thing that can probably carry over into what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You grew up in California, and now obviously we're in Texas, Austin today. So like, how did that come about? Did you go to college out here? And tell me about that.
I grew up in Southern California and went to high school in California. I knew that I wanted to get that college experience, kind of going away from home. Wanted to go to, you know, academically rigorous school, but also wanted that kind of fun, traditional college experience. I also had the idea that I wanted to be in business, you know, because I didn't quite have that idea yet. I knew that business applied to everything. The entire world was, you know, a business, or there was economy around, you know, markets, et cetera. So when I visited Austin, once I got into UT Austin, fell in love with the city back in, you know, 2010, and knew that this is where I wanted to be. So in 2011, you know, moved out here when I was 18, continued to fall in love with the city, and that was kind of the start of my time in Texas. There was a little bit of, obviously, that period where I was working for Princess Cruises outside Texas, but Texas kind of became a near and dear place to me, and Austin specifically always felt like home.
You're not the first person to say that today, and we're experiencing it here as well. I've been here for 24 hours basically, and I'm feeling the same thing. After being here for a couple of years now, what do you think it is about Texas, or about Austin specifically? And you can speak to the entrepreneurial community here as well, but what it is about Austin that kind of drives all of this entrepreneurial spirit? There's, you know, a ton of CPG, there's a ton of investment here. What is it about Austin?
I think there's so many things to it. It's a place where it's big, but it also feels like you can get in at the ground floor, which I think in a lot of big cities is very tough. You know, Los Angeles, where I am from, is very tough in that way. New York City is a giant city. Chicago, San Francisco, Miami. I think these are giant cities where it can feel tough to kind of break in. Austin, you can get around anywhere, 20, 30 minutes. The CPG community specifically is very strong. I think that all originates with, the founder of Whole Foods and kind of that retail opportunity that presented to CPG brands as a place where you can kind of trial it out. Didn't quite work out for me in the alcohol industry. Can't sell in grocery here in Texas, but I think that's kind of what allowed the CPG industry to thrive here in Austin. As well, UT is a big draw. There's a lot of really smart people that get pumped out of there year in and year out, and a lot of them fall in love with Austin, just like you said, and want to stay here. So they reinvest in the city, reinvest in the community, and it's kind of been a place that celebrates, keeping things weird, kind of being bold. You don't see the Walmarts and the Targets. There's not as much of that. There's a lot more of that mom and pop, independent chains, local chains that are celebrated, which I think has made it easier to kind of be an upstart and have that be celebrated.
From my limited 24-hour experience, it seems like there's a lot less chains here and a lot more like one-offs, and people are happy to support those, right? It's less like a little bit more community oriented. You told me on a conversation pre this that you started something else before you started Bold Move, obviously.
That's right.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah. So when I was a sophomore in college, I co-founded a organization called Caring for Camo, and it was a idea that kind of started just in the PCL library in Austin of, we're college age students. We have college age peers that are serving overseas in the military, and we want to show them that we care about them and that we support them. We realize that a lot of people in the military, hear from young people, like kids in kindergarten send them letters, and maybe older people, and of course their close family and friends, but their college age peers aren't necessarily as connected to them as we felt like they should. So we wanted to create a community around that, and we organized packing parties where people could come together, pack boxes, write handwritten letters, give them reminders of home in those packages, but also just, write letters of support and show them that they're cared about and supported. And it really took off. We were able to do some fundraising events with the UT football program. Colt McCoy, Mac Brown, back in those days, was still involved, and it was super cool to kind of see the UT community, which was, I always knew it was strong, but really came together around our group, and it spread to other universities at the time, and really made an impact, which for me kind of showed the power of entrepreneurship, of how just an idea can turn into something incredible.
A lot of people just aren't really sure what it takes, right? To take that idea, to use your words, from ideation to something tangible or to make an impact. What did it take back then? And then what did you learn from that experience back then with Caring for Camo that you can translate that forward into Bold Move and everything else you're going to do in the future?
People don't quite realize how much work it takes behind the scenes to make these things happen. There's a lot of organization that needs to happen. A great idea, doesn't quite do it. You need the infrastructure to make it a success. Some industries are capital intensive. Some of them, you need, physical space. You need to be able to pay rent, all that kind of stuff. For Caring for Camo, what I really took away from that was how much we needed to bring on A+ talent to make things happen. When it came to, the operational pieces of it. We brought great people in. We got people that helped us recruit. We're out on the West Mall at UT's campus, kind of just roping people in, telling them about the organization, convincing them to come out on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. in a random classroom to hear us talk and see if they wanted to join. It really took a village to make an idea a success. So there's kind of like that iceberg analogy of you only see above the surface. There's so much work that goes into it, and it kind of planted that seed for me.
What about the shitty part? What about this part? What about the part that sucks? Did you experience that? Obviously, we'll get into the stuff that you're doing now, but did you experience that on a micro level back in the Caring for Camo days too? Or?
With kind of Caring for Camo, there was no revenue tool. You were always kind of beholden to constantly needing to fundraise. Felt like, well, hey, we have this great mission. Shouldn't that alone kind of propel this forward? And really, there is this fuel to the fire that you need. And in that case, it was you constantly needed to fundraise. There was always the recruiting aspect because, college is only 4 years long. There's going to be some people leaving. You're going to need to kind of backfill that. There was kind of that piece of it that was tough for sure. And that definitely translates to entrepreneurship where, sometimes you can be kind of spinning your wheels and like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? And eventually, you find that unlock, but there's sometimes it feels like it should be easier than it is. And of course, anything worth doing is going to be hard, but that can be frustrating, especially when you're just a young entrepreneur trying to make things happen.
And you probably have limited amount of time, and that's the resources, right? Obviously, too, to make these things happen.
Absolutely.
You're in
If
college.
you're a busy student, especially, that was definitely a challenge. And yeah, when you're trying to start a company, people want to know, did you put your own money into this? Are you putting your own time into this? Are you working full time on it? Not everybody can quite do that. So that hurdle for certain people, especially people that don't have as many advantages in life, like that's really challenging.
So you finish college, you get this stable job. It sounds like you're semi-happy yet, yeah, fair to say?
Yeah.
Cool. And then you decide, I'm going to move on and start something else. That's got to be a huge decision, obviously, right? You've got this stable job that is paying you well, whatever the case may be. Obviously, the passion drives something deeper. Tell me about like that decision-making process where you had the idea for Bold Move, but you were like, you were weighing your options, basically, I assume.
Yeah, I was definitely, weighing my options. At the same time, I kind of felt like a little bit, I guess, trapped in that way of like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like I always wonder, if I can make it happen. I'd kind of been working on it a little bit while I was still, in the job. I brewed coffee at home. I bought all these different kind of whiskeys and bourbons and things like that to kind of test it out, put it in mason jars, hand it to friends, kind of got some feedback. But learning about the regulatory environment and how much goes into starting an alcohol brand, I just realized that it was going to be too tough. Whether it was manufacturing in-house, I realized quickly that was going to be impossible. I learned about minimum order quantities, ordering cans of, cans that were designed with your packaging on it, 4-packs, totes of whiskey, gallons of cold brew, all that kind of stuff. You can't just call up the can guy and get, 100 cans. You got to order a certain amount that's going to really take a big chunk out of your bank account, so to speak. So for me, I just realized that I needed to surround myself with other entrepreneurs, other people that could kind of, build that entrepreneurial mindset and that entrepreneurial knowledge for this specific kind of industry that I was really interested in getting in. And that was kind of what ultimately led me back to Austin, back to UT to get my MBA and kind of, guided me to sinking my teeth into the entrepreneurial community in Austin.
So you had the idea, and then you seeked the community to kind of flush it out and check, see if it was viable, kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. When I moved back to Austin in July 2020, I immediately started, reaching out to people. The Capital Factory Network, although it's primarily focused on like tech and the defense industries, does have some great mentors in like the CPG space. So I enrolled in that immediately. It was during COVID time. So I had a virtual membership, which wasn't too expensive. Started going to these coffee meetings, reached out to UT alums when I was, about to start my MBA and during my MBA that either went into CPG or had started things, who had worked for startups, et cetera. And then started kind of building my network from there and kind of just meticulously was adding to my Rolodex, adding to my OneNote, kind of taking notes on how do you get a brand off the ground? How do you, design a package? How do you get it approved? And then just kind of continue to kind of build upon itself, create a snowball effect.
How valuable has it been, that network that you started to build back then, right? This community that you're talking about. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people that kind of think that they can just do it. They can start something and it's just going to work, or they don't have the community or the backing or anything like that. How valuable has that community been? 5 years, 4 years later.
I mean, for me, it's been everything. I would say that you do need to have that self-belief. So it's good for people to be like, I can just make anything happen. You can take it too far if you're not willing to humble yourself to admit what you don't know. That's gonna like hamstring you. You're never gonna really make it, I don't think. There's like kind of that lone wolf fallacy. You gotta surround yourself with good people to make things happen. A good community, a good support network, whether that's friends, family, a partner, etc. So for me, it was everything. I didn't know the industry. I could make a great, kitchen grade product, but, learning the food science. I'm not a food scientist. How am I going to make a shelf stable product? But this was all pre-AI, by the way. So, maybe with ChatGPT, you can figure out a lot of this stuff. But, yeah, that was kind of for me. I got to lean on the food science for the food science aspect. You need a liquor lawyer to help you get your approvals done, your certificates of label approval, your state ABC, licenses, et cetera. Whether it was the UT community, the Austin community, the broader, CPG community. I've gone to, beverage conferences all across the country. Those people that I've met have really helped me kind of open my eyes to the things I do and do not know.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were working, your job during the day, and then probably working on Bold Move in the evening, I would assume.
Right.
And so you're just like kind of burning the candle at both ends. Was there a definitive moment or point when you were doing that, where you're like, okay, it's time to, quit the job and go all in?
Can't necessarily point to like one moment. I think I was just very frustrated with my lack of progress in the earliest of days, where I'm like, I just can't quite make things happen right now. Like, I don't know how to get this off the ground. Like I said, I thought you'd go to the can guy and get the cans. I thought you'd go to the coffee guy and get the coffee. You go to the farmer's market, get some sales, and kind of like learn that way. But alcohol industry doesn't allow for a lot of that stuff. It's not an industry where you can kind of bootstrap it. It's just a capital intensive industry. So I started exploring, what my next step would be. And for me, that was enrolling in the MBA program at UT, surrounding myself with an entrepreneurial network. So I think, it doesn't quite answer your question. It wasn't like that aha moment on that front. There was definitely the aha moment on the idea, but it was kind of a genesis story, and one foot in front of the other, and ultimately realizing that I needed to make the bold move to make the company happen.
The idea behind the beverage itself, and we've had conversations offline about this too. So obviously you've mentioned that it's trademarked, but your mission isn't just to sell more of your own cans. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah, we want to create a cocktail. So, imagine kind of owning the mimosa and the Bloody Mary is kind of how I describe it. I want to make it America's boozy coffee. So there's, the espresso martini that originated in England, the Irish coffee that originated in Ireland, and the Carajillo is from Spain. There really isn't America's boozy coffee, and I'd love for Cold Brews to be, America's boozy coffee. So we'd love for it to be something that we can partner with other amazing coffee brands, whiskey brands, and turn it into something kind of bigger than just Bold Move Beverages. I want the cocktail to be, huge for sure. Not to be synonymous with brunch time drinking.
What do you think the barriers are to achieving that status in consumers' minds?
Beverage as a whole is a crowded industry, right? There's so many different great brands out there that are known for different things. I think for us, it's about getting entrenched in the communities that resonate with our product. We found that to be, golfing, fishing, tailgating, kind of these daytime, afternoon use cases where people want to energize and socialize, is what we like to say. We're still in the early stage of building our brand. I can't say, we're going to totally be the drink for this audience. We're still kind of building it up, building the plane as we fly it, so to speak. We're in 6 states so far, but as we continue to expand nationally and continue to grow our marketing message, I think we're going to kind of find, our home, so to speak, and how to kind of continue to build this message, build the Cold Brews trademark and cocktail, and then eventually kind of be just known as that boozy coffee once enough people have tried it. But it's about, being uncompromising on the product itself so that people, when they try it, fall in love with it. And then also just really being true to our message of wanting to help people, live life to the fullest, helping them energize and socialize.
It makes perfect sense that that golfers are loving the drink,
Those early tea times, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Get it started while kind of getting your morning coffee, and I love it. When you're planning for a business, you're always kind of writing out your business plan, or I imagine you probably did no shortage of that with your MBA. But I'm more curious in, when you're writing out your target market, you're assuming, there's data, but you're also assuming things, and you're kind of piecing all that together.
Absolutely.
Now that you're in the market and have been for a while, like you said, 6 states, what are you learning that you couldn't have anticipated about the people that are consuming your beverage?
Something that I always thought was, coffee is universal, and, both men and women are going to love this. Will be everything to everyone. And you learn quickly as an entrepreneur, like you really have to be narrow focused and laser focused on who your target market is and where you fit into things. So for us, we've definitely been speaking to both men and women, but we found that, with whiskey, there's a little bit of that stereotype that sort of rings true that primarily men drink whiskey. So that's been something that we've learned to tailor our message, our brand around to some respect. Age-wise, we found that Gen Zs aren't necessarily the prime target market for our product. It's mostly a millennial type of product, younger professionals, young families that kind of resonate with our product because they're looking to have quality over quantity primarily, whereas younger people in general, and it makes sense, are living it up more and don't have as bad a hangover. So for us, we're just kind of tailoring to that quality over quantity type of use case where you just want to have a couple drinks with friends, brunching, golfing, that sort of thing.
What did the R&D process look like for you? I mean, obviously there's a lot of, you mentioned you were kind of cooking it up in your kitchen, I imagine, for a couple of years in advance, right? You had the idea for a while, as you said. But once you kind of got down to the meat and potatoes and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this, what did the R&D process look like?
It was a pretty extensive process for me. I kind of learned it organically over time. You started with kind of buying coffee at the grocery store, different roasts, different origins, brewing it up both kind of at ambient temperatures and in the refrigerator to kind of see how that affected the flavor, the time, the temperature, etc. And then mixing in the different whiskeys and then giving it out to people. And originally I was giving it out to like my closest friends, family, but you learn that they don't want to say, negative things. So you don't always get the best feedback from doing that. So I quickly learned I had to go kind of a layer 2, 3, 4, kind of past that. I'd look for definitely that quantitative feedback. I'd give out surveys and kind of, rank it, 0 to 10 and learn things like, how do you typically take your coffee? How do you like our original black product? How do you take your coffee? How do you like our vanilla oat product? And kind of learning, we can't try to be everything to everybody. We need to make a black coffee version for people that really don't like sugar, that want that pleasant bitterness of a black coffee. And we should make a more kind of sweet and creamy version for that latte style coffee lover. Originally, I thought I'd make one product and kind of fit right in the middle, but that wouldn't quite do it for either of those audiences. So that was something that I learned in the beginning, and that was kind of what eventually had to splinter off into 2 SKUs. From there, I ended up talking to co-packers and learning more about the food science, needs of the brand, about different types of pasteurization, whether that was flash pasteurization, tunnel pasteurization, retort pasteurization, to make sure that any sort of spoilage, micro spoilage wouldn't take place. And then working with a food scientist to find commercial, industrial suppliers of these premium ingredients that we wanted to source that would be reliable, that we wouldn't have to worry about them going out of business or that varietal of coffee necessarily being defunct and our whole flavor profile changing. So that was kind of the process for me, is kind of starting with the benchtop sample, which is what the industry calls kind of like that kitchen grade formula, working with the food scientist to kind of source the right industrial ingredients, and then finding the right manufacturer that had the equipment to do sleek cans, pasteurization, etc. Nitro dosing, that's kind of for non-carbonated products. All that kind of sort of stuff is a little bit more niche in the industry, and we had to find somebody that could do all those things.
The company that you found, are they local?
No, they're out in Tennessee. So we found a manufacturer out in Tennessee, out in whiskey country, that is great for us. Long story, but didn't quite work out with our first choice. And eventually, this company has been a godsend for us. We've been able to grow with them, no hiccups, limited shrinkage. They don't kind of waste the ingredients we send them. They make a good amount of product every time. And, just good people to work with that we can call up when we, want to work on, new SKUs, and they always are our game.
Most importantly, good people.
Most importantly, good people. Yeah, you definitely want to work with people that make your day in, day out life enjoyable. So that's been nice. You don't want to work with assholes, for sure.
Definitely not. Circling back on that whole feedback process, you're giving this out to friends and family. You realize that you're not getting the best feedback because it might not be honest or whatever the case may be. How did you deal with feedback? Like, was there ever a scenario where you were super keen on the product and maybe the market feedback was just not solid, or, maybe you're indifferent to the product at this point because you know that you want the best product to win, but, this negative feedback keeps coming in, or this change or whatever the case may be. Was that a part of your process that you did have, some criticisms and that sort of thing? And how did you take that, internalize, and turn that into the product it is today?
It's really hard in the beginning to not take things personally, right? Like, every source of criticism, every critique, whether it's coming from a good place, can sometimes feel like, this is your baby and they're talking shit about it. Like, how could they not like it? Obviously it's good. But when you kind of remove yourself from that, it really allows you, kind of frees you up to look at it more subjectively. And so I definitely received feedback on, oh, this is way too whiskey forward, or way too coffee forward, or, I really want to taste the vanilla more. And so that really allowed me to kind of create something that really pleased that target demo. So that was kind of my goal. Like I said before, just like for a black coffee lover, I wanted a great product that married the coffee, the whiskey, the vanilla. You could taste all 3 flavors, but nothing overpowered the other. And then with the vanilla oat was more so, still want to taste the coffee, but kind of that more latte type experience where it has that kind of that mouthfeel of a latte, but also still has that oakiness of the whiskey as well. So that was kind of how those developed over time. At the end of the day, every product is going to have people that might want it slightly this way, slightly more the other direction. And kind of when you have kind of equal voices kind of saying around the same thing, most people liking it, maybe, a bell curve of feedback, that's when you kind of know you've hit the nail on the head, in my opinion.
And have you made any significant changes to the formulas since launch?
No, luckily we have not had to do that. We've definitely had, the tariff issues and things with prices going up and down. There's been aluminum cans, the prices have fluctuated as well. So we've had to deal with that, but luckily not necessarily having to change ingredients. There are ingredients they're ubiquitous. Coffee is like the most traded agricultural commodity in the world, most traded commodity after oil. So coffee is out there, which is great for us.
And whiskey's close.
And whiskey's close. Whiskey's good whiskey is very close.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume with a product like yours that's unique, it hasn't been done before, people are just excited to try it, right? Like whiskey and coffee, it sounds awesome. I can't wait to dive into the one in the fridge right now. But there's also an element of education that goes into it. There's also, I know you've been throwing around Bold Move, which is the action that you took, but also the name, obviously.
Yeah.
Which is great marketing. Talk to me about kind of what that next step was once you had a product in hand and you're thinking about packaging, thinking about getting it out to market.
The alcohol industry and the beverage industry is very different than a lot of other industries in this day and age, where it really comes down to getting in front of your customers and, as people like to say, getting liquid to lips and cans in hand. So that was what the name of the game was in the early days. It still continues to be a huge priority for us. Hyper-local marketing is the best thing you can do in the beginning, getting it into a store, sampling it at that store, helping to show that, that owner or that general manager that they made the right decision bringing you in, so that one facing in the store can turn into two facing, can turn into a display, and you just continue to kind of get that repeat business. That's kind of the beauty of the industry, is kind of making that product kind of part of people's weekly routines, or whatever it might be for that specific product. So yeah, liquid to lips marketing, cans in hand marketing is the best thing. Getting great market managers, people that can find events where your product kind of slots in, has been big. And then as you kind of scale up, is kind of evolving your marketing to go from being a local marketing thing to a regional marketing to, you hope one day to be kind of doing national campaigns, maybe a Super Bowl campaign one day. So that's the kind of thing that is common in the beverage industry, is you kind of grow it over time. You do point of sale marketing. So you'll see displays, end caps at stores. You'll see bar mats or coasters at bars. LED signs, all that kind of stuff is important as well. Digital marketing is always going to be a piece of the puzzle. We don't really sell too much D2C, though it is available online, because the cost of shipping liquid can be a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit more prohibitive. People are not as willing to make that purchase as they would with maybe something like a powder that is negligible in terms of cost of shipping. But we still do it. Social media marketing, influencer marketing is stuff that we've dabbled with and we want to do more of. And then you do kind of like a little bit of the classic, the PR, the LinkedIns, the kind of more B2B type marketing, where you want to get in front of the distributors, the retailers, all that sort of stuff, because it's all about getting your product in front of customers. And so you want to push your product out there, but you also want to pull people into your brand. So you're kind of working at it from both directions in the beverage industry.
Especially in a saturated market, right? I imagine, like I said, it's for you, it's probably just like more education,
Yeah, and our product is new, right? So, people know coffee, people know whiskey, people have had an Irish coffee, they've had an espresso martini a lot of times. We've invented a name for a product, Cold Brews, that is pretty intuitive. The packaging, speaks coffee and it speaks alcohol. But there's a kind of that aha moment that needs to happen when they see it on the shelf or when we present it to them, that is a good and a bad thing. Because once they have that aha moment, they really get it and they love it. And it kind of helps create a little bit of stickiness. But there is still that hurdle of introducing it to them that we have to do, because people are loyal to the brands that they know and love, and they don't want to get burned on something that doesn't taste good. So for us, we kind of have to just get them to try it, and that you never know where that's going to lead. If they're a coffee lover, it tends to lead to a good place. So that's kind of how we look at it.
It's a really fascinating place. Like as you talk through it, I'm just identifying that, I mean, we've talked about it. It's a unique product. And so one can't really identify or liken it to something else, if that makes sense, right? So if if you have a beer and you like IPAs, then you go pick up an IPA and you're going to know loosely what it's going to taste like. Right. It's a bigger risk to try something brand new.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it really takes, just like any technological or any kind of new idea where there's those early adopters, and that's what you're kind of going after, is those people that are willing to try new things, those foodies, those bevies, those coffee lovers, those people that are kind of tip of the spear. So there's definitely that piece of it. The recommendations I've gotten from a lot of those entrepreneurs I mentioned before was you kind of need to find your evangelical kind of like fan followers, those people, those brand loyalists that can kind of be that foundation for you to build upon. And that's kind of what we've been continuing to hone and develop in these early stages.
What's been one of the hardest parts or the hard, throughout the journey that you maybe didn't anticipate from the beginning?
There's a ton of stuff in the beverage industry that makes it challenging, because in the United States it's a 3-tier system. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to a retailer might want to bring it in, but you need to have a distributor, and you need to have a good distributor. So for us, it's about creating a product that not only appeals to customers, but it has to appeal to the retailers, has to appeal to the distributors, has to fit within the broader ecosystem. So that was a tougher thing for me to realize. We thought the product would resonate really well in like brunch restaurants, for example. But what we've learned is that they make a killing selling bottomless mimosas and things that are really cheap to sell, cheap Prosecco, cheap orange juice, and they can kind of make a huge margin on that. So when it comes to like cracking a can and handing it to somebody, they might really want that boozy coffee, but they're not going to necessarily want to replace something on their menu that has this huge margin on it, for example. So for us, it's about, where's this kind of problem or opportunity in the market, and how can we be that solution, or that that new thing that amplifies the retailer's portfolio, the distributor's portfolio, that fills a use case for customers that want to energize and socialize, right? Like those golfers, we have to kind of tease it to them and get them to try it, and then have them kind of fit it into their routines.
Is it a valuable strategy that like you might go direct to consumer so that they can bug their local store to carry it? Or do you kind of have to hit it from both ends? I'm thinking out loud here.
No, it's a great question. We've had a little bit of that. We've had people go to stores and sometimes they'll pick it up. But if you don't have reliable distribution in that area, then maybe you'll sell in one case, but then you won't sell in that next case. Mm-hmm. And so that's been the biggest thing. And yeah, if a customer, let's say like we don't distribute in Oregon, for example, but somebody in Portland really wants our product, they go to the store, that store would then need to go to their distributor, that distributor rep would need to go to their manager, that manager would need to go to the GM who brings in new products, the GM would need to reach out to us. There's so many kind of telephone type of layers that would need to happen for that to successfully work, that it can be challenging. Part of the reason why you see so many of these celebrity brands popping up is because they already bring the awareness piece right out of the gates, which makes it a lot easier of a sell to go kind of the traditional way, which is finding the distributor, finding the retailers, and then getting the product on the shelf so customers can buy it. So yes and no. I think there's a way to do that, and it's possible, but it's a lot more difficult. We found, you can land a retailer and then find a distributor to kind of serve that retailer, but kind of going an extra layer deeper to the customer can be a little bit tougher.
How do you choose what markets you're going to? You said you're in 6 states right now. Is there a formula to that?
We're always learning. So for us, it goes back to we don't want to work with assholes. So great distributors are pivotal. Like that's a must. They got to be great people, and then also the right channels have to be available to us. So we've learned that we don't do particularly well in these kind of markets that don't allow liquor or canned cocktails in grocery. That's a lot of the United States. We believe in our running theory now is that like the mom and pop independent liquor stores aren't our channel. Even the big box liquor stores aren't necessarily always our channel. Though we love working with like Total Wine, for example. They're like a special case. But when we can sell a product in grocery, that's where the foot traffic kind of naturally comes in. That's where people who are walking the aisles are more willing to try new things. And we can kind of get some of that organic business and that repeat business from people just discovering us in the world. Nebraska, Minnesota, California have been states for us that we've found a lot of success because we've been able to get into the grocery channel, and that's allowed us to kind of have that repeat business where the reorders kind of are coming in more on like a cadence that you could come to learn to expect. Whereas in some of these other places, it's more of that push strategy, and it's harder to get that natural pull because people go to the grocery store multiple times a week, but maybe the liquor store they go once a month, twice a month, whatever it might be. So it's a little bit less of a habitual thing. The number of channels just becomes a lot larger as well. You can land an Albertsons, for example, and then you can get into thousands of stores eventually, or a Whole Foods, for example.
I think a lot more people should take a page out of your book and only work with people that they like. No assholes.
Yeah. It's a major hack. I highly recommend it when you have the choice.
Obviously, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a business owner, that sort of thing changes a lot beyond what you actually do day in and day out. What's changed in your life after becoming a business owner?
Oh, I mean, it's changed everything for sure. It becomes wrapped up into your identity. The job is kind of never ending, right? You're always kind of thinking about it. Your worldview kind of changes the way you look at things. I think for me, the biggest thing was just appreciating that much more all those people in my support network that I've come to like lean on in times where things are going well, things aren't going as well. That's been a major thing for me. So entrepreneurship, I mean, it's a stereotype, but it takes everything. It's very, very difficult. It can test your relationships, but it can also kind of be that crucible that kind of strengthens those relationships too. So that's kind of been, for me, that biggest eye-opening thing is you really come to appreciate things and cherish things a little bit more, and also look at things that aren't as important. It puts things in perspective, which is cool.
Do those insights come from personal experiences?
Absolutely, yeah. I think for me, I've kind of alluded to, we had a first manufacturer that we had a bad production run with, and it was a very challenging time for the business. We had been gearing up for a launch, and it kind of set us back, and it was a major period where I felt like I let so many people down. Those earliest investors, those MBA classmates, those crowdfunders, that sort of thing. My fiance now, that helped me lift me up. My family, my brothers, my parents, my good friends here in Austin, and in LA, that really I came to appreciate more and more. That kind of gave me that confidence that I can lift myself up and I can make things happen again. It was really a low period. I'd also gotten into a car accident at the time that really physically kind of, had me being shaken. My back was hurting and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it helped me, come out the other side a lot stronger with a lot better perspective. So wouldn't necessarily change it all, but it definitely affected my worldview and my perspective.
When you're in that and you're experiencing these hardships, things aren't going right, whether it be personal or business or whatever the case may be, especially when it's both at the same time.
Yeah.
What are some of the tactics that you've learned? Because that's not new. That likely will happen again, right? Is there any advice that you might have to younger entrepreneurs or people that are experiencing that for the first time that they're not alone in that?
I think there's this idea that you have to grind, right? You got to grind and just that's what entrepreneurs do. They hustle. But I think at the end of the day, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good, right? Sometimes you just got to put one foot in front of the other. So fill your cup, have other things in life that give you enjoyment that, you can, feel passionate about. So whether that's, playing a sport or, if you're religious, like going to temple or church or whatever it might be, I think that is kind of my advice. This can't be your only thing, or else you're going to go crazy and your whole, happiness is going to be wrapped up into it. Whether you succeed or don't, life will go on. Obviously, you want to do your best and work your hardest, but there's going to be times where it's important to avoid burnout. So just continue to fill your own cup, have a full life, invest in your relationships, invest in your friendships. They're going to be ultimately what'll help you get, fulfillment out of what you do for work and out of life. So that would be my advice to young entrepreneurs, is just have a well-rounded life. That's going to be important.
Too many people forget that, I think, early stages, right? Like you were talking about the grind mentality, and as important as it is to make sure that you can put in the hours when you need to, it's also important to not forget the things that actually matter long term. Not that their business doesn't, but
Yeah, be hungry, of course, work hard, but at the same time, understand that there's so much that goes into it and it's not going to happen overnight. So you have to plan accordingly.
This idea of white labeling. Tell me where that sits in your business plan.
I'm very interested in it because for me, I'd love to build that Cold Brews cocktail name as a cocktail and as like a national kind of awareness piece. So I'm very interested in it. There's horror stories around, brands doing it and then Kirkland brand version of it popping up and crushing their business, for example. You put all your eggs in that basket and then it goes away. So I think you have to be smart about it, but for us, we'd love to partner with great brands, great retailers, great coffee brands, great bourbon brands to help get the Cold Brews name out there, do seasonal things, do market specific launches, etc. I think that'd be a great tactic for us. Very open to doing it. We are exploring it currently with one brand, which is super cool. I can't quite talk about it yet, but would love to make that happen. And I think there's room in our roadmap for it. It's something that we've hoped for. And I think as we build our company up, and we build the Cold Brews name up, the appetite from other brands will grow. But we're still kind of building our name at the moment.
That's really cool, though, that there's already an opportunity to do that this early, right?
Yeah, that's super cool. I think an example I like to give is let's say you want to work with, Pete's Coffee, and they're really big in, Pacific Northwest. Pete's Cold Brews would be an amazing way to launch in that market. But obviously, they're on a different stratosphere than us. So you kind of just invest in those relationships, and you never know who you're going to meet at these trade shows, these CPG meetups, that sort of thing. It's important to kind of put yourself out there, talk openly about your ideas, and you never know who's going to kind of come across your radar.
You mentioned when we were talking there about crowdfunding and that sort of thing. I didn't know that was something you'd done.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as common for guests on this show. So I'd love to explore that. What did that look like for you? I guess let's go into your funding in general.
Crowdfunding, we've done it twice. We've done them both on Wefunder, which has been a great platform for us. It's a tool that I think you can't put all your eggs in that basket either, and you need to really promote it. So it's not as easy as just creating a video, creating a page, and then just money just starts flowing in. It's not that easy. Nobody wants to eat in an empty restaurant. So you need to seed it. You need to get, those earliest investors to kind of back you. You need to put some marketing budget behind it. You need to have a promotional plan, but it can be a great way to get that awareness piece up and running. Outside of that, we've done all sorts of things to get off the ground. I had, some of the savings from my first couple jobs. That's, I guess, the benefit of not going straight from college into starting a company is I had a little bit of savings. And then I also entered pitch competitions when I was at UT. Didn't make it out of the first round. Then I made the finals, and then the second year we got, we won the competition and won the $15,000 prize. And then we'd entered other pitch competition. That kind of validated us and helped us then raise like a friends and family round, which was done on a safe note. And then we've entered other pitch competitions. We were one of the winners of Render Capital's pitch competition out of Louisville, Kentucky, out in bourbon country. And that was a big win for us as well and helped us kind of broaden our network, get other investors to the table. There's a saying in the alcohol industry, you're always fundraising, right? Whether you're openly raising or not, you're kind of in a pre-raise, or you're actively raising, or you're in the next pre-raise. So for us, we've kind of adopted that, and that's helped us. You bring capital in, you do bigger things, you use that momentum to then help raise further funds to help continue to build a national brand. That's the path that we've taken. So it's been primarily friends and family, pitch competition winnings, crowd funds, and a little bit of angel investment to this point. We haven't taken any kind of major venture capital financing or family office financing. That's probably down the line though in the next 6 months to a year.
What excites you about what you do every day? What gets you out of bed in the morning other than having a cold brews?
Yeah, I think you had asked me before, those big company jobs, were they fulfilling? And I learned a lot, and I look back at them with fondness, but my days were a little bit more monotonous than I would have liked. They didn't really quite challenge me to the point where, as an entrepreneur, I feel that challenge and then some. It's every day is different. I've learned how to, I've learned food science. I've learned how to create a forecast for our raw materials and ingredients. I've learned how to do sales. I've learned how to fundraise. I've learned how to do the books. So I love the challenge of it. It really tests me in all aspects of that word, right? So I love the the variety of how my days are. And, like I mentioned, I'm going on a flight tomorrow to launch in a new state and meet new people that I've never talked to in person. And that's super exciting and fun. So I love the adventure of being an entrepreneur a ton. And I love the challenge of it. It feels like you're putting, a puzzle together and you're just kind of fitting the pieces together. So that's what I love about entrepreneurship for sure.
Do you think serial entrepreneurship is in the cards for you? Or do you think, maybe I'm thinking too far in advance? Like, what does that look like for you?
I love so many different things. I do think that being an operator is core to me. I can also say that I've done some mentoring and guest lecturing at UT, and I love kind of advising and mentoring, and I'm passionate about that as well. So, maybe when I'm a little bit older, I'd want to teach or be on advisory boards. Ideally have, a great exit so I can invest in the next generation of great consumer brands, but also continue to take the knowledge that I've learned and be in the trenches. I think that's my future for a while, and I want to continue to do that.
What excites you about giving back and that mentorship and that sort of thing, especially while you're building? It's time intensive, obviously, to spend time with these students or these mentees, whatever the case may be. In some cases, you learn from them as they're learning from you. What is that thing that keeps you doing that?
It's a passion thing for me. I love to do it. It fills my cup, so to speak. It helps me. Yeah, I still learn from them, and I learn from what their perspectives are and how they look at things. I also think I benefited so much from that, from current entrepreneurs, that it's a karma thing as well. And I say this and I mean it. Anybody who reaches out to me, I always try to acknowledge them if they're another entrepreneur and find time to chat with them. 30 minutes, you can find 30 minutes. It's all those things. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's, how to continue to fill your cup, but also just help make this community, especially the CPG community, the strong community that it is.
What does success look like to you?
Success? Oh man, I think it can mean so many different things. I'm probably still kind of searching for what that ultimate meaning is for me. I think being successful in your relationships is super important. Of course, like having a business where you treat your employees well and that, you do right by your suppliers, your partners is important. And kind of like how people talk about you when you're not in the room, I think is a big definition of success as well. So those are things I strive for: being a son, being a good partner, being a good employer, being a good partner to business partnerships, all things that I strive for. But yeah, I think of course you want to have that big exit as an entrepreneur as well, and that's our goal. Absolutely. But I think there's going to be more important things in life, and that's just something that kind of is the result of all that hard work, that culmination, that kind of, the journey is the important part to invest in. And hopefully you get to that destination that makes everybody happy at the end of the day.
Did you start the business with friends? What does that look like?
No, I started it kind of on my own. It was a solopreneur in the beginning, and then a little over a year ago, I brought on a co-founder, Lewis Milligan, who with over 25 years of beverage alcohol industry experience. I recommend that to any entrepreneur, is try and find a co-founder. It can be a lonely road being an entrepreneur. I'm sure the other entrepreneurs have said that to you. So having not just that community, support network at home, but also while you're in the trenches at work can be super beneficial. So I benefited a ton from having a team around me. But yeah, started on my own, and it was definitely tough in the beginning. There's pros and cons to that as well. You always hear about those horror stories of, this was my best friend starting this company with it, and now we don't talk to each other kind of thing. So that's been my story, and it's worked for us so far.
Are there boundaries that you had to put in place to communicate effectively with your business partner, with, staff or support or anything like that?
We've definitely realized that hopping on a phone call, hopping on a Zoom is the best unlock for whenever there's a disagreement or something that you're struggling to work through. Just messaging over text or emailing or sending Slack messages, I think sometimes that doesn't just quite work for getting your message across or working through complex things. So that, I wouldn't say a barrier, but that's been kind of like the biggest unlock for successful communication, is just face-to-face or over the phone, where you can kind of hear each other and have those reference points.
Can't feel emotion through text, right?
No, absolutely. And things get lost in translation. Like, people look at things totally differently. So that's been a big thing. And yeah, boundary-wise, I think just try and be as honest with each other as possible is just a big thing when you're especially with a co-founder type relationship.
What's next? What's coming down the pipeline? What are you excited about? What are you building currently?
For us, we're developing other flavors. There's that partnership that we're working on as well. The launch in Minnesota, we're super pumped about. So being in the Minneapolis, St. Paul region and then beyond is going to be big for us. And we are looking at some other states as well. So those are kind of the big things. Fundraising to kind of make us a national brand will be coming down the pipeline soon. So excited to kind of announce that formally on LinkedIn pretty soon, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, continuing to build the Bold Move Beverages name, continuing to build those partnerships is kind of what's next for us. Continuing more of the same, just kind of building the plane as we fly it, as I like to say.
That's the only way to do it, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Where can we send people to follow along what's coming up down the pipeline?
Bold Move Bevs on Instagram. That's kind of our most active social media outlet. And then continuing to kind of follow our page on LinkedIn. If you're kind of active on there, we'll post updates on there as well.
Jacob, thanks so much for coming by, man. Really appreciate the conversation, and there's so much for all of us to learn, and you're in such a unique space with such a unique product. I'm really excited to keep following along.
I appreciate it. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.